I want to share what embrace the suck means, but I'm going to share it at the end because we have to understand the journey first to understand why it sucks. And then we have to understand why we should embrace it. So, in super fast context, born at a very young age, 1969, just me and my mom. My mom's American, dad's Canadian. I was born in Canada. Grandma moved up when I was 3. And I grew up in the interior of BC. So it's a small town, mill town, hockey, rodeo, and mining, agriculture. Went to a lot of different schools. By the time I was in grade 6, I'd been to 8 different schools. So moving around that much, traveling in the same town, by the way, moving that around to different schools, I had to develop a coping mechanism. There was no father in my life. So I had to develop a coping mechanism. And I used humor to navigate new schools. And sometimes that worked. A lot of times it didn't. And I got beat up a lot. Now, when there's anybody here ever been picked on? Like, it's not a fun experience. But even more from being picked on is watching someone else getting picked on and having no capacity to do anything about it. And so I'm 11 years old. I'm in grade 6. And I learn about paratroopers jumping into World War II. And I was like, man, oh man, I'm going to be that guy. A, no one's going to kick my ass. B, no one's going to kick someone else's ass who doesn't deserve it. So from that moment in time, I completely identified with paratrooper. I didn't even know the military didn't exist. I was literally playing cowboys and Indians in my backyard. Always on the Indian side. I always like, hey, stop picking on. So when I realized what paratroopers did, that just completely in my mind, I am a paratrooper. Going to be it. It's just so my mother being American and most of her family, her father was in Vietnam. Her father was in World War II in the Pacific Islands, U.S. Marine. And I discovered all this after the fact, but a lot of my uncles were in Vietnam. My mother wanted nothing to do with me being in the military. You can imagine. So she just made sure that whatever interest I had, she just kind of scurried me away. And then finally she realized, well, I'm just going to put you in cadets. It's kind of like our version of boy soldiers, that you have something similar down here in the United States. But I just gravitated to it more and more and more. So of course I did well in cadets, really identified that, loved the uniform, loved the structure, loved the discipline, loved the leadership, loved a lot of things about being in cadets. And it was not a really cool, popular time. Certainly in Canada, everyone was very indifferent to what the military is or was or what they did. They didn't really understand why we didn't have one. One could argue why we have those same questions today. So by the time I finished high school, grade 12, now this is my 10th school, and all I know is I want to be in the military. I joined the military. I go to jump school. I'm 21, jump school. I'm 22. I get to the Canadian Airborne Regiment. And barely turned 23, I get deployed to Somalia. So if anybody's ever seen Black Hawk Down, that happened just a couple months after we redeployed back to Canada. But when we went there, it was like the Wild West. No one was really in charge. It was just tribal warfare everywhere you went. And that's where I got what I jokingly say is my MBA, my master's in brotherhood and assertiveness and adaptability. So it's my MBA, 2 A's. Masters in brotherhood, assertiveness, and adaptability. But it didn't. Remember I was sitting at a friend's house one day, and he said, "You know you're on the right path when people around you have what you want. They're living your life. They're living the life you want. They have the lifestyle you want. They have the relationships you want. They have the health. They have all these things that you want. You know you're living in the path of the people you follow have this." And then immediately I realized I can't stay in the military. They were broken physically. They were broken in spirit. They were broken mentally. They had broken homes. They didn't know their wives. They didn't know their sons. I'm speaking mostly because my colleagues are all 100% men. So I look at the men that I look up to, and this is the landscape in front of me. I'm like that. I couldn't stay in the military anymore. So I write out my engagement. It's all good. I get out. And I end up in sales. Selling photocopiers. Anybody ever buy a photocopier? Perfect response. One, like no one wants to admit that, right? Because it's always your fault. You bought this piece of junk, blah, blah, blah. What's wrong with it? So I spent 3 years trying to convince people how exciting it was to buy a photocopier. Never fun. And I went through the next 10 years, I was in different sales capacities from photocopiers to law enforcement equipment to gym memberships to mascots. Most people don't know Calgary's famous for pretty much every professional mascot made in the world is made in Calgary. There's another one in Edmonton. They're pretty good too. And there's one in the United States. But so I've sold everything from 15-minute sales cycle to like a gym membership to 2-3 year sales cycle for law enforcement equipment, to transition from one bullet to the next bullet for the police officer, and a bunch of different things in between. So I'm really falling in love with this journey of I am a salesman. Now, parallel to all this, I played a lot of rugby, played a lot of athletics, and I've also been at this point, I get married in the Army. That didn't work out well. Took me 6 years to figure that out. I got married shortly after again. That didn't work out. So now I'm divorced twice. I have a daughter from my first marriage. So I'm a father. And life goes on, and I fall out of, if business was a relationship, I had a bit of a divorce. Sales was a relationship. I had a bit of a divorce with her because the person I wanted to be in sales was everything I thought sales was, the opposite of everything I thought sales was. Sales to me was sleazy, cheesy, gross, a means to an end, commission breath. It was all these things. And I really thought relationships were really important. I just couldn't convince my sales manager that me spending time with customers I already had who would never buy a photocopier for at least 4 years was a worthy endeavor. I could sell more toner. I could sell more service. I could do it. If I do the work now, then when I flip the lease. And the same thing in all my other sales experiences too. I always thought that investing time and energy with the existing client was a really good idea. So, but it never seemed to be that way. And so we broke up in whenever we did. We had this 9-year marriage to sales and we broke up. And I got recruited at a private school to coach. I was a strength and conditioning coach. And I'd always played rugby from grade, I've always been in athletics of some capacity, but in high school, I started playing rugby. So I ended up as a strength and conditioning coach at this private school. I think, private school kids. I mean, who all met private school kids? I mean, I'd never met one, but I knew I just knew these were snotty little punks. Turns out they were amazing. And I learned a ton from them. These kids were phenomenal. And the parents were just loving. In fact, the greatest kids to coach ever I've found are the ones who have loving, engaged parents. Doesn't matter money or no money. That's just the best kid to work with. So I'd gotten recruited out of sales into this school. And I'm working with my principal. He's the one that recruited me, a good friend. We'd coached a lot of rugby together in high school. And he said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm 30. I said, I really want to be a coach. And I was thinking athletics, And so he recruits me to the school, and here I am. I am a coach. I'm like, yes, I have arrived. I've gone to heaven. And 4 years later, that ended. The economy went sideways. It was 2008. There was energy crash. Canada was certainly impacted, definitely by the energy crash in Calgary. I live in the Texas of Canada, where we sit on the third largest oil reserve in the world, and we try to, so like we're a very wealthy province, and all of a sudden re-enrollment drops to 60%. And my role as a strength and conditioning coach, the assumption is a phys ed teacher can now do it. I can't, and it becomes a luxury item, and I'm gone. And this was, in the grand scheme of things, this wasn't really a big deal, but it was kind of the third time I was fired. The first time I was fired from a health club, I couldn't sell fast enough. The salesman they wanted was not the salesman I was. I got fired from the law enforcement equipment sales. They wanted me to be on the road. I engineered a way to get my sales up without having to travel so much, because I played rugby for Calgary. It's representative rugby. So I play in a Western conference in Canada. And they just want to be on the road. Their thought of a salesman was, you're on the road, week in, home for a week out, and rinse and repeat. And I was like, I can't do that. So I leveraged, there's this thing called email that kind of was showing up. I was like, look at how I stay connected. And again, to me, it was about connection. It wasn't about if I was on the road or not. It was all about connection. So in the process along the way, I get married. My wife's name is Danita. Beautiful lady, best friend. But we have something in common. We're both farm kids. she knows who her dad is. She found out she was adopted at 12 by opening up an envelope she saw with her name on it. That's a way, right? Hey, Danita Blatz, who's that? Realizes she's adopted. Now it's birth mother, but not the birth father. So that's a big shock to her. And I was adopted 11. My mom married Ralph Fowler. So I was born Vincent Lampert, but now I'm Vince Fowler. He adopted me. When I was 17, I asked my mother, hey, could I meet my birth father? She said, yeah, no problem. So we met at a Chinese restaurant in Williams Lake and introduced me to my birth father's name is John Grant. What a powerful name. John Grant. Love that name, Grant. So solid. We look nothing alike, but we both have big bushy eyebrows. And I said, woof, and blue eyes. And I'm like, that's really cool. So my wife, she gives me this Ancestry DNA kit. Anybody ever done one of these, Ancestry DNA? Cool. That's, if you've never done one, get therapy, then do it. So spit in a cup, send it off to Ireland, comes back. This is Christmas 17 gift, Ancestry DNA gift. Get the results March 16th. And I was sitting with my stepfather. This was a week prior. And I said, really looking forward to seeing these results because I don't really look like a John Grant. I love my dad, but my stepdad's very smart. He goes, well, that's because you're not a Grant, you're a Brecknock. What is a Brecknock? Well, so I hit Google hard, and the week later, I've already gotten a lot of this figured out. For those of you who've never done it, you get your results, you click on it. It kind of just tells how you got to where you are. So my family's largely from Scotland, navigate through Ireland, largely Wales. And then there's some Scandinavian. And I think, great, I'm a rugby player. Like I'm a Celtic Viking. Amazing results. I was in the army. I was deployed. Like, yes, this is so awesome. Do you want to see your DNA results? Oh, this could be bad. Click. First one, Kathy Fowler. That's my mother. We, with 100% definitive, this is your mom. I say, yeah, you're right. Kim Robinson. I was like, damn it. I've already done the research. Kim was born Kim Brecknock, married a Robinson. Her mother is my aunt. And it just went further down the list. And it was Lamperts, people I already knew, but then it was all these Brecknocks. And I don't know if you've ever looked in the mirror and thought, who am I? But the wheels in my life started to coming off the bus. And that was, by now I've been in coaching. So I realized you got to have a mind map when you follow this story. A few years ago, when the economy crashed, I ended up getting a job in business coaching as a business development I'll go find clients for all of our coaches. And then 8 months in, I've always been really curious about asking questions. So they said, hey, we think you'd be a good coach. I got certified through Action Coach. And my career was pretty good. I was making pretty good money. I was paying the mortgage, always was. It was fantastic. But now I'm standing in front of a mirror thinking, I don't know who I am. I'm a Lampert because my mom is, but I'm not a Grant. And now I got to call my dad and say, Dad, you're not my dad. And the pain of it is I ultimately find out my mother knowingly and purposely introduced me to the wrong man. John has 3 daughters and a son. So I have 3 siblings and a brother that I've been like 3 siblings and a brother. That sounded weird. I have 4 siblings. Rose, Sharon, and Candace, and my brother, John Boy. But I got to call my dad and say, Dad, you're not my dad. And the first word out of his mouth was, I don't care what it says. You're my son. So we cried. Ryan, fellow crier, love you. So we cried. I called my sister Rose. We're the closest of the 4. And I said, hey, same thing. We're not related. I'm not a Grant. She says, I don't care what it says. You're my brother. Everything else in my world just started to fall apart. I didn't know who I was anymore. So I have a question for all of us. Is who am I? Who am I? Am I a paratrooper? Well, that's problematic because there's rules, there's dogma, and there's an enemy. And when I was in the military, Soviet Union was our enemy, Iran was our enemy, Iraq was our enemy, Somali insurgents were our enemy. There was lots of rules, what to wear, how to wear it. There's lots of dogma. PPCLI guys, 2 commando guys, we pay attention. We do things differently than 3 commando guys. We put our tattoos in very specific places on our body. Am I a salesman? What are the rules of that? The rules I believed were I gotta, whatever it takes to get the order. A, B, C's always be closing. And that rubbed up against me. So I never identified as a salesman, but I'm in sales. Am I a husband? Am I a father? Am I divorced? Like, what am I? Over and over and over again. So remember that first marriage? There was always a little hint of, we don't know, with my daughter. My wife was Navy. I was Army. She had affairs. And so when our daughter was born, she looked like my sister, one of my biological sisters. But when she was 10, my circumstances being what they are, she just said, I don't know who the father is. So now that I know who my father is, Donald Brecknock, I'm like, okay, I've been given John Grant's family medical history to every single doctor. And once the genealogist, when we thought our child and when my Danita had a baby, we thought there was some health issues. So I'm unloading all of John Grant's medical history, only to not know it's the wrong dad. So I reach out to my daughter, Bronte. I said, hey, explain everything. 3 months later, she agrees to a paternity test. I mean, just because of the distance and a variety of things, we just didn't talk a lot, but we know who each other was. I just say, hey, for nothing but health, you should know who your father is. So I got the results. Anybody did a paternity test? It's easy. Just gag yourself with a big long stick and a cotton ball on it, put it in a cup, send it away. And as soon as they had both of our results, they sent an email the very next day because I paid extra. I wanted certainty and I wanted it fast. The level of uncertainty in this world of life we live is heavy sometimes. And so I open up the email and it was exactly the same as my DNA results. I was like, oh, one eye, and it was like 100% not your daughter. Who am I? Am I a father? Danita and I have 2 kids. So yes, I'm still a father, but that identity of father, like I always said, I'll treat you like you're my daughter. It'd be better to do that and find out you're not than to treat you like you're not my daughter and find out that you are. It was always my narrative. So keep in mind, this is all going down, and I'm 6.5, 7 years into my coaching practice. And I'm sitting across from a client. I think, I'm a fucking fraud. I'm asking you to do things. I'm asking you to do hard things. I'm asking you to do all these things. And I don't even know who I am. So everything just kind of peels off my life. And I start to overcompensate. I use everything I know in coaching. I use everything I learn in positive psych. I use everything I've learned in athletics and everything I learned in the military to keep my shit together. And every coping mechanism starts to fail and fail and fail and fail. And I start avoiding tasks. That's not Army. That's not who I am. And I start avoiding tasks. And having a family member in Hong Kong, in my Brecknock family, he says, hey, you were in the military. Do you think you could get some poppies sent over here to Hong Kong for Remembrance Day? So in Canada, we wear a poppy. Most Commonwealth countries do. And I said, yeah, sure. So in the process of picking those up, I bump into a guy literally, and he introduces himself as Sean. Now I heard that name before. Turns out my platoon commander in Somalia and Sean are friends. And so I say, hey, you know Cliff, I'm Vince, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, no way. So just like 2 Army guys do, we sit down and have a coffee. It's a Friday. Neither of us have anything important to do. And an hour into the conversation, he goes, hey, how would you like to talk to our team at the OSI clinic? Well, team is code for psychologist, and OSI is operational stress injury. So this is 2 years after I found out I'm not a grant. And I naively said, if I can get some free psych to help my clients, I'm in. What does it mean to be a veteran? my identity, my connection to the veteran was, I'm not that guy. So I said yes, so I wouldn't get in trouble. I show up, they answer. It's really close to Remembrance Day. I answer all these questions. I'm in a puddle of tears, and I just chalk it up all um, to just being raw in the emotion because Remembrance Day, and I've got 13 friends that never came home. So come back 2 weeks later, another report, 17 pages, post-traumatic stress. Now who am I? This question just keeps circling over and over and over again. And I get to a point where first thing I have to do when I wake up in the morning is go into my office, put on a meditation app, headphones, noise canceling headphones, a blanket, and I lay underneath my desk. And all I do is just breathe so I can get through every single day, proving to myself, I don't have post-traumatic stress. That's just a label people give weak people. So the best part of this whole experience is that COVID's going on and I don't have to go to any of my clients. The best part about this experience is I've now adopted a daily exercise routine. And because COVID closed the gyms, the COVID protocols forced our gyms to close, I started going for a run. So it's October 4th, 2020. And I was watching the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. And I said, episode 1, these people are lunatics. Episode 7, I'm Googling ultra near me. And I signed up for a 50K ultra in 21. Of course I do, right? And, but I start to run. And so I started coming up with a few more questions. I just realized I'm bad at staying in boxes. So where are you? And where are you going? I didn't know the answer to those questions. I didn't even know who am I? Because everything into my identity, Glennon Doyle was on Adam Grant's podcast. If you're not listening to Adam Grant, he's a really unique author. He's many things, professor, author, organizational psychologist. But she said, as soon as we have an identity, then there's rules, dogma, and enemy. And I went through this entire list. I started just writing down, who am I? Military, soldier, veteran, husband, father, all these labels. I started giving myself all these labels. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And I started looking, okay, what are the rules and what are the dogma to hold on to this identity? If I'm conservative and I vote conservative, then the enemy is liberal or socialist. And the rules are this and the dogma is that. And if I'm a father, funny enough, there is a little segment of people on Father's Day that show up on Twitter, of course, just on Twitter and just on Father's Day, that say, you know what, I raised my children without a father, without a husband, therefore I want Father's Day for me too. And I thought, okay, that's cool, but why are you mad at fathers? So there's an enemy out there for fathers. And they started just going through this list. And the first ultra comes and I run 50K. I like redundancies, so I wasn't sure if I would get into this one because there was a bit of a lineup. So I didn't quite have a confirmation bib. So of course I signed up for another one after that, which was 30 days later. So I get into the first ultra in 2021 and I run that 50K. Then a month later, run another 50K. And of course that's not enough because I run because I'm curious. I don't run because I'm a runner. I don't say I am a runner because that's got rules. You got to run, you got to wear tights. And you got to be fast. That's a rule, apparently. And I like to walk a lot. I like snacks a lot. So that's why I like ultra running. So, but I am really, really curious. And I run because I'm curious. I'm curious because I run. How far can I go? And there's a John Maxwell quote. Instead of asking the question, how long will it take? It's the wrong question. Ask, how far can I go? And ever since I got that mantra into my head, I've just been running. Now, the following year, I did a 50K. 2 months later, I did an 80K. 2 months later, I did a 100K. 21 hours, 48 minutes, 15 seconds. What do we learn about ourselves in 21 hours, basically? And I learned that I am curious, deeply curious. I learned that I'm very compassionate. I love humans. I learned that I'm very courageous because without courage, there is no action. I learned that I'm assertive. I learned that I'm a curator. I'm a curator of wisdom, past and present. I am a curator of wisdom, past and present, so that others can exercise the courage to live life in a meaningful way, to pursue a life that's meaningful to them. So as I'm doing this, all of a sudden my health gets better, my running gets better, my business starts to get better. And when I first started my career, I was often asking, what's the impact? Even on my website today, which is horribly out of date, is you want to make an impact. I want to help you do it. But it's the wrong question to ask. Most of us, I predict, we think we know who we are. And I'm saying we generally. I don't want to say any one of you. I don't know what your journey is. I don't know what the work you've done is. But most people, I don't believe, actually know who they are. I think they have a label and they pitch the label. I am this, I am that. I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that. What you do is not who you are. So none of my labels, you can take anything away from my life and I haven't lost my identity. You can take a child, please don't. You can take my wife, please don't. I still have my identity. I can always be curious no matter what room I'm in. I can always be compassionate. Empathy and compassion is not an endorsement to shitty behavior. I can always be empathetic. I can always be compassionate. I'm on a run. I listen to Viktor Frankl, and he has two questions. He basically says, where are you? Where do you want to go? Because it's kind of like buying a plane ticket. How many of you who flew here today? Not today, but you know what I mean. Okay, so here's the rules of going to an event like this. If you don't know where you're going to and you don't know where you're flying from, we can't get here, can we? Well, same in business, same in career. And why does it matter? And I ask those questions over and over and over. So my clients are, some are independent business owners, independent consultants, and they probably maybe $1 million commissions. And others are 15, 20, $30 million companies. And they can't even answer those questions. So that's all I do. That's all I coach. Who are you? Why are you here? Where are you going? Why does it matter? That's it. And then we'll talk about the impact. And lastly, this. Vincent Lampert. I was born Vincent Lampert. It was my baseball when I was a little kid. Started playing baseball 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And it's sitting on my desk. And I've realized that this ball represents each and every one of us. This ball knows exactly who it is. One piece of leather represents vocation. The other piece of leather represents self, away from work. And all this stitching represents each and every one of you individual connections that keep this together. Without connection, career and self is a mess. And the values we have, my values are my identity and my identity are my values. That's what gives this ball integrity. So this ball sits on my desk and it's a reminder every day that to be whole, and I was talking to Kent earlier, to be integrated is to be whole. And my past, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, is all part of who I am. So I'm an open book. You got a question to ask. I won't hide anything anymore. I know who I am. And I fully understand and deeply appreciate this event because it's all about amplifying connection, deep, meaningful connection. People with huge give a shit factors. And it doesn't matter if your business makes this much or millions or billions. I've seen a $2 billion income statement. It's no big deal. It's just numbers and it's measured in percentages. It's really no big deal. So, and embrace the suck is to recognize and accept that something hard and unpleasant is also unavoidable and necessary for forward progress, period. It's just a reminder, hey, the pain, it's just part of the journey, embrace it. It's necessary and unavoidable for forward progress, so you may as well embrace the suck. Thank you.